everybody, and welcome back to Becoming Branches. It's been a long time since it's just been me and my buddy PDM. For those of you who don't know the awesome acronym, that is Pastor Dustin McKinney.
Thank you, Adam. It has been a while, just me and you.
Buddy. I know, it's like a smaller table.
Back to the original.
It is. Back to the
duo.
basics. I just want to give a personal shout out and thanks to all of our guests. Yeah. We've had the Browns, awesome. Pastor Roger, our lovely wives. What an awesome, huge series this has been. And we're kind of coming to a head of this.
Yeah. And it gives people kind of a rest from looking at our ugly faces all the time. I mean, kudos to you and everyone who watches. Blessings upon you for putting up with us for so long. Thank you.
And I just want to give a shout out, guys. I was told to tame the hair, but it's untamable at this point. And if you've been following the series,
once you release the beast,
if you've been following the series, if you go back, especially on YouTube, we are also on Spotify. But if you go back from the beginning, my hair is quite a bit shorter, and it's been crazy.
That's awesome.
I'm growing it out with my son. And I don't know if I'm going to last. What are we getting into today, sir?
Yeah, so as we think back over the series, we've been talking about the family. We've talked about the role of husband. We've talked about the role of wife. We've talked about the role of parent. But one role that is very important that I don't think gets a lot of star time, or however you want to call it, showtime, is that role. I know, words, me and my words. I'm always so good.
It's fine, you're doing great.
I'm always so good. So we're going to look at the role of sibling.
Okay.
So brothers, sisters, what does God call us to? Because it is an important role.
It is.
I have a younger brother and I have an older sister.
That middle, you're that middle child.
I'm the middle child. But you know what? Life was pretty good as the middle child. I thought I had a great childhood. So, siblings, we're talking about this, and so let's give the people a little bit of an insight to what our lives like as a brother. So, like I said, my brother Braden, he actually lives here in Danville now. Okay. He's going to teach at Danville Middle School. Nice. Not middle school, one of the elementary schools. So he is very excited. But my brother is very much like me in the sense of humor. Like, we just love stupid humor. We'll say stupid things to each other and we'll crack up. My older sister, we have a great relationship now, but growing up,
it was kind of...
Well, we always loved each other.
Yeah.
But she was bigger than I was, and I was just kind of her punching bag for much of my childhood.
Been there, done that.
Much of my childhood. But when it got to the point where I could kind of fight back, she became the best sister ever.
I bet.
And she was super nice, super caring. So my sister and I, we have a great relationship now. So, but it's good. How about you, brother?
So my sister was a giant of a woman. Literally, she was 6'2".
Oh man, yeah.
6'2" at 15. So when you said she was always bigger than me and I was a punching bag, that was my whole childhood, because she was like, she was huge. And I could never physically get up to that stature. I was unfortunately the younger sibling, and I was annoying. I was like this. Oh, yeah. I was this gnat around her, and I always wanted to do stuff with her and be with her. She loves sports and basketball. My dad's really tall, and so we all kind of played basketball together. And she would somehow talk me into making things for her, like. For lunch, because we'd be home. Our parents both worked, and we'd be home at summer break.
Yeah,
and she would want something that I didn't really want, but then I would be making it.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden we'd be eating it, and I didn't even want this. And so she had this way she had this way of kind of getting me to somehow
do the thing.
Talk me into doing something for her. Hey. And I think that's the older sibling.
Well,
thing.
Yes, because I would do the same thing to my brother. But when you first said making things,
I
didn't realize you meant food. Like I wasn't picturing you doing crafts or basket weaving or some kind.
Here's your quilt.
And you just don't come off as the crafting type.
No, food. Okay. But see it's really a blessing, because I'm quite the cook now. No pun intended on my last name. But when you start at 8 years old, you can make stuff.
That's awesome. That's a good skill to have.
And wrestling all the time, but it wasn't really a wrestling match. It was more of like if she had mercy on me that day.
That's exactly right. My sister used to, she would put me into the edge of the couch, and then she would just sit on me, and then she would just bounce until I went into the couch.
That's kind of fun.
Until you could never find.
That's kind
you
of
couldn't
fun.
find me.
That's kind of fun.
Oh, well, no, it wasn't. It was not.
You didn't like kind of being in the couch.
Yeah, no, it wasn't super great. A lot of crumbs down there. I'd come out, just crumbs just stuck to my face.
Here's the thing. Okay, so I have 3 children, and I always tell my kids that it's a domino effect of if what the older brother does to the middle turns around and does to the youngest.
Oh yeah.
Is there any validation?
Oh, absolutely. Because, and I'm sure I annoyed her too, and so she took care of it physically. And then when my brother annoyed me, I did the same thing.
So you did everything to him as she did to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
See, that's what I'm saying. So be careful out there, siblings, because it does stair step.
Yeah, it really does, and the good things too, which is hopefully motivation. That the good things that you do towards your siblings, hopefully that will also be repeated down the line. So as we're looking at this role of sibling, we've talked about our own siblings. There was a first siblinghood, I guess, or the first pair of siblings. You got Cain and Abel, which didn't set the bar very high to begin with. And so when we look at that relationship at the very beginning, what are some of the things that went wrong in that relationship? And when we look at Cain and Abel, I don't know. So we have not talked about this.
Oh man, yeah.
First thoughts. What goes wrong in this relationship? Because if you are not familiar with the word, Cain is going to end up killing his brother Abel.
Spoiler alert.
Well, yeah. So sorry.
Flash that on the screen.
And thanks to you, that's over now, and you've ruined that for me.
Gosh.
Yeah. So why? I mean, this is supposed to be a relationship of love and encouragement and to have each other's back. But that is not what happens with the first.
The first thing is jealousy, envy, anger.
Right.
I mean, siblings do that.
Oh, yeah.
Especially brothers. And I'm not saying brothers and sisters because my sister and I obviously did. But brothers have this, I can see it within my sons. They have this, I'm going to get you can do anything to me, but not my brother. I'm going to outdo my brother. I don't care. I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to outdo my brother.
This guy is so competitive.
Oh, it's so true.
And we have this innate competition, rivalry within that brotherhood, and I think that's clear with Cain and Abel. And God bestows blessings here, but not here, and that you're not going to beat me mentality goes extreme.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well, it's so funny because, like I said, I have a younger brother. He's my little brother, but he's much bigger than I am.
Yeah.
So he's taller and he loves working out. So like his biceps are like the size of my head. He's just jacked. And I remember, playing sports like growing up, like I would always beat him. We'd play basketball, baseball, whatever. I'd always beat him. And so he came back. I came home from college and he was playing high school basketball. And it was the first time that he had beat me one-on-one.
Yeah.
I was like, we're playing again. We're playing right now. And to this day, I've never beat him in basketball one-on-one. But that, at first, it drove me insane.
Yeah.
I was like, you're my little brother.
Yeah.
And I'd always tell him, like, hey, you may be bigger than me, all this, but I will always beat you because of this drive that I'm your older brother and I have to, and that alone will will me to win. That is untrue. That did not pan out as I had hoped it would. But you're right. So Cain and Abel, right? Abel, he recognized that first relationship with God, that was most important. And so when it came time to sacrifice, Abel brought his best, most precious lamb, and Cain, he was the worker of the ground. So he was more of a farmer type. And the Bible doesn't specifically say, but what we can pull out from the scripture is that God recognized Cain's sacrifice as not his best. That he may have brought some crops on the edge of the field that didn't do so good. So he brought these things, and he did not prioritize that first relationship, which we've been talking about this whole family series. That we have to prioritize that relationship first, and we saw the effects of when that did not happen. Cain did not do that, and so because of that, because he didn't get that relationship right, it had consequences of this relationship, as we see play out in our world today. And so God accepts Abel's sacrifice. And Cain, you're right, this jealousy grew within him because this relationship wasn't good first. He had not submitted himself to God. And so he's overwhelmed with anger. He's overwhelmed with jealousy. And then in this fit of rage, I mean, he plans it out. He calls his brother out. He's like, you got to come out with me. And then kills his brother. And then we see him, try to sidestep it. So, when we have sin in our lives, we now can take two paths. We can take responsibility for it, and we can try to repent and do our best, or we can try to hide it and have it be the secret sin that lives in darkness. And if you've ever had secret sin, that will consume you. That will consume your life.
Absolutely.
And it thrives in darkness. But exposing it to the light, that's the first thing we have to do.
Because we've all been angry at our siblings.
Yeah.
We've all had those moments where like, man, I'm going to get you back. I don't care if I get in trouble by mom and dad. I'm getting you back. And within that thought process, we have this fake reality of justification because, well, they did this to me, so whatever I'm about to do is going to cover this. Right. In reality, that's not the case. And so the thing about this story is when Cain is plotting, we've all been in the, not obviously murderous, I hope not, of that, I'm going to get you back. We're plotting that.
Right.
But then, hey, come on over here and then go ahead and commit this hideous act of murder. How many times have you been in a situation where you have acted out of anger, but immediately you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And you have this remorse and this guilt and this, oh my gosh. And it's not, yes, you're going to get in trouble by mom and dad. It's because this is my brother. This is my sister. And then all of a sudden, all that stuff you were angry about, it just kind of washes away. And you're like, I am so sorry. And generally, you're closer for that little bit. Yeah. But to get to this role or this level of anger and malicious act is just, it's unfathomable.
Well,
really.
Right. And again, Cain, we're talking about meditating on God's word, and we just had our men's breakfast. We're talking about setting your mind on the things above. Cain chose to meditate on his anger and his bitterness. And so it led him to plotting, and it led him to do this thing. And that had dire consequences to it. And then, like I said, then he doesn't take responsibility, right? This thing happens, he tries to cover it up, which just makes things all the worse. God's like, hey, where's your brother? And he's like, who am I? My brother's keeper? Like, why am I supposed to keep track of him? And then God is the one that exposes it to the light. And oftentimes, when it gets to that point, we're looking at some pretty substantial discipline or consequences. And I think about, how could it have been different if Cain, if he took responsibility for the first sin, which was not prioritizing God, if that happens, none of this happens.
Right.
But he, let's say he does the next right thing, and he takes responsibility for the feelings that he has towards his brother. And he submits that to God. And he says, man, this isn't right, God. I did not bring what I was supposed to. Abel did. And I'm angry at him for doing the right thing. That's not right. If he submits that next thing, or even in the midst of the planning, any point in time, Cain could have submitted that anger. He could have submitted that over to God. But he chose to hold on to it, and he chose to keep it in secret. And so that led to him doing something terrible, and then God exposed it to the light. And at that point, Cain's he's afraid for his life. He's like, God had to put a special symbol on him.
Yeah, so nobody else would touch him.
Right, because people, sure wanted his blood. And so when I think about stages in my life of, and even within the stage of the relationship of a brother and sister, so many times I could have brought something to the light so much sooner. Yes. I could have dealt with that sin, or I could have done the next right thing. But we have this innate desire in us to cover that up because we're either afraid of the initial consequence, or we're afraid of the shame or the guilt. But God God is so good and his mercy is plentiful and his grace is sufficient. And so if we just submit that over, give that over to God at a much earlier stage, we save ourselves a whole bunch of heartache. We save ourselves a whole bunch of other consequences and mistakes that we might make down the road.
That's super hard to do in the moment.
It is.
Right? So the knee-jerk reaction is punch for punch.
Right.
And it's so rare to see, you did this to me, but I'm going to rise up and be the bigger person of that humility and that servanthood. And really, it's the same aspect of husband and wife role as a sibling role is how can you outserve one another?
Right.
And how can you, I tell my eldest son, Noah, he's my oldest son. I pulled him aside when the siblings are squabbling or whatever. And I said, son, you're the oldest. You lead this pack. God has bestowed you. He chose you. He didn't choose Emma. Right. He didn't choose Levi. He chose you to be the oldest sibling. And it does bear responsibility of when something's acting as the oldest, you say, guys, we can't do this. And I know you're angry. And you lead it. And that's why kind of earlier I was talking about does a stair step, because I've seen in Noah and Levi and Emma is if Noah is a certain way toward Levi, Levi will turn around and be a certain way toward Emma. Right. And I just saw it the other day. And I pulled them all three. And I said, guys, listen, I just watched this stair step. Okay. Now, Emma, you're kind of annoying or whatever Levi. And Levi, out of his memory of, okay, when I annoyed Noah, this is what happened to me. And so she's annoying me. And this is what I'm going to do to her. And then I went all the way back up to Noah. And I was like, Noah, how can you, by your actions, have changed this domino effect? And he was really like, wow, like I didn't realize that impact. But what you're saying is it's so true. If we can do that in the moment, it's huge.
Yeah,
it's huge. Guys, that's all the time we have. This is just the tip of the iceberg for Brothers and Sisters Role. This is a fun series. Stay with us.
Yep. See you next time.